I would love to invite you to share about your near-death experiences in whatever way makes the most sense to you.
All right. So, first of all, as you mentioned, I've had a couple of experiences. The first happened when I was 7 from a major virus that affected my hometown in Western Massachusetts, along with the surrounding area. And it took out, I think, several dozen kids who ended up in the hospital from anywhere from 48 hours to several weeks. And of those children that affected, the worst off, I was among that group, and it was basically, I want to say 24 of us, or pretty close to that ended up in comas of varying lengths. The easiest ones were like 48 hours, but the worst ones lasted weeks. And the problem was the symptoms of this virus included things like severe dehydration, where even they were pumping IV bags of fluid into us on a constant basis, and it wasn't having any effect. We had a fever that ran anywhere from 104 to 107 Fahrenheit. And for those who don't know, 107 Fahrenheit, your brain is basically boiling inside your skull. At that point, one of the things that kept happening for some of the worst ones was what's called septicemia, which then became septic shock. And that's where you start having organs shut down. And that's what happened to 7 of us, five of us who died during our comas. And of those 5, I'm the only one they were able to bring back. So there were 4 other children, unfortunately, who did not come back and who lost their lives. And these are all kids under the age of 16, so it was an absolute tragedy. But I was clinically dead. Towards the end, my brain, heart, and lungs were the only organs left, and that's usually the case with these organ shutdowns. And within an hour, first the heart and lungs went, and they immediately started CPR, and right behind that, the brain went, and everything flatlined. I was clinically gone. As soon as I died, I was outside of my body. I was able to see the team, the blue, what they call it, the cold blue team, working on me. The doctor at the foot of the bed, who was giving orders to the rest of the team. I noticed he had a bald spot on the top back of his head that he used to used the hair from the left side of his head to comb over. And now a lot of people say, well, bald spot, no big deal. Well, the problem is where it was on his head and the position he was in at the foot of my bed standing up, where I was lying, where my body was lying in the bed. I could not have seen it unless I had x-ray vision to see through his head. So there's no way for me to see it except from the position I was in, which was above and behind him. When I first came back, I remember when I came back, I was still in a coma for another 7 days. But when I finally woke up, one of the first questions I asked of the nurse that came to treat me was, where's the doctor that has the bald spot? And she thought for a minute, oh, that must be Dr. Johansson or Johnson, something like that. And she went and got him and said, is this him? And I said, well, I'm not sure. I didn't see his face. I said, can you bend over? And he thought that was kind of strange, but he did. And I noticed the bald spot with the comb over. I said, yep, that's you. He said, how did you see that? I said, because I was watching you from up there. And I pointed towards the top corner of the room behind where he was standing. And that kind of freaked him and the nurse out. For me, it just, they thought I was lying or making it up. But for me, it was just, I'm just telling you what happened, But so that was how the first one began. The second one began due to a bullying incident at a camp I was at the age of 14. Unfortunately, I was bullied a lot from right after I came back from the first near-death experience through past the second near-death experience until I was almost 16. And this was a daily thing every time I went to school. It happened every single day. And um, so one of those bullies happened to be at this camp I was at in August of 1985 when I was 14. And I didn't know he was there. He didn't know I was there. But when he saw me, he immediately came after me and basically jumped over the bed that I was supposed to sleep in and knocked me backwards into a wall. Well, where we were at was an old farm that had been converted over into this camp and had been basically donated by the family once they ran out of heirs who wanted to keep the farm going to this group that ran the camp that I was at. And so this place we were in was a huge 3-story barn. And so like the bottom level was where the meeting rooms and offices and things like that were. The second level is where the camp staff slept. And then the top level, which used to be the loft, is where the children slept. And the way it was set up was an A-frame roof that met in the middle, and it was supported by these 4x4 wood beams, where it was like the flat side on the bottom, flat side on the top, flat side on the side facing in towards the room, and there was a corner there that jutted out on each beam, going up through the ceiling. And what he knocked me back into was one of those beams, and it hit me directly in the brain stem, as luck would have it. And of course, the brain stem, for those who aren't aware, runs your basic bodily functions, your lungs, your heart, everything that keeps you alive. And so the impact of that basically created an instant shutdown of my brain stem, and instant shutdown of my heart and lungs, everything. And I was dead before I hit the floor. Literally, I was just dropped like a sack of potatoes, gone already. And so they had to call an ambulance, but the kids were screaming for the camp counselors. The kid who did it ran away. He was scared, of course, getting caught. And the counselors came running. Luckily, one of them happened to know CPR. So he immediately started doing chest compressions in the breasts in the way that we were taught at the time. Managed to keep my heart going by doing that, but I was still clinically dead. Like if I'd been on, machines at the hospital, it would have read no heart rate, no breathing, no brain activity. And in the meantime, the ambulance was coming, but it took them 4 minutes to reach us from where they were. And so by the time they got there, they had to then bring a stretcher up 3 flights of stairs to get to where I was, and then bring me back down those 3 flights of stairs to get to the ambulance, while they had so you had 3 guys that were because one of them was driving, the other 2 were in the back. So the 2 in the back were the ones carrying the stretcher down the stairs. The third one was doing chest compressions while they were carrying me. And so he did that while the camp counselor did the breaths, so they could work together. But it was kind of a Keystone Cops operation all the way down the stairs. And I was watching this the whole time because my spirit kept following as wherever they went. It was like I was tied to the body. So wherever the body went, I went. And so they loaded me in the ambulance and drove me to the hospital. Luckily, they got my heart and breathing restarted within less than a minute before they reached the hospital. But by the time they got me back, it had been 7.5 minutes. And the 7-minute threshold is where you start to, have possible brain damage, sometimes long-term or permanent. Luckily, I avoided that because it was like right at that threshold. But I was gone from, basically when I hit the floor and then all the way till they revived me in the ambulance, 7.5 minutes. So during that, I was also having near-death experience. But I remember seeing, the inside of the ambulance. I could see the 2 guys in the back working on me, but that's the last thing I remember. In both cases, I when I was out of my body, especially the first time, I was really scared. I was panicked. I didn't know what was going on. I remember I was up in the corner of the room and I was thinking, okay, this is me. And I could see this person on the bed, but I didn't recognize it as myself because, you're used to thinking of wherever you are or wherever you think you are as being you. And so I was like, this is me up here. Who's that? And it wasn't until one of the doctors said, come on back, Andrew, come on back, that I realized that they were working on me. And that's when I really started getting scared because I didn't have any concept of death or anything beyond it. So, but when I started getting most panicked, I heard this voice in my head, a telepathic voice. And I've always described this voice as sing-songy because it sounded like someone singing and talking at the same time. And it was very melodic, very calming, very beautiful. Like I always said, if I could record that voice, just record him speaking, I would sell it for like ASMR on YouTube because it's one of those things like it would calm almost anybody down, but it immediately calmed me down and just made me real. Like I was like, okay, I'm take a breath. You're okay. And the voice was telling me, you've died, but you're okay. You're not. Nothing can hurt you where you are. You'll be fine. And once I saw the team working on me, the voice said, you need to come with us. There's a place you need to go. And it pulled me up through the corner of the room, through the ceiling, through the roof. And I remember I could see my hometown as we were moving up. So it was like floating up into the sky. And this was at night. So, I could see the stars, I could see the moon, and everything was clearer than I could ever remember seeing it. I could see whatever I wanted to focus on. Like if I would go, oh, where's my house? My vision would go straight to it. Where's the ski area that I grew up skiing at? Oh, there it is. And it would immediately, my vision could like zoom directly in on it. And it would appear completely clear, like I was standing there. And so, like I said, stars, the moon, I could zoom in on anything I wanted to. And it was amazing because, like I said, the clarity of it was so, it was not fuzzy like you're used to seeing things through an atmosphere. It was completely sharp in focus, everything. And the colors really popped. Like you used to see, like they almost always look white to the naked eye. But, stars have different colors. There's blue, white, there's red, orange, there's yellow. So I was able to see all these colors simultaneously. And then all of a sudden, everything went black just for a second. And then next thing I knew, I was in this area. It felt like I was laying on a bed. And around me were these walls and ceiling and floor that all looked like they were made of this bluish green energy. And it's hard to describe what it looks like, but if anybody's seen the newer version of Tron, the newer Tron movie that just came out a few years ago, the energy that world was created with looks a lot like this. And it was like you could reach out and want to touch the walls, but they would almost retreat from your touch. Like you couldn't actually touch them. You could just kind of feel this energy pushing back against your hand. But the wall, everything was malleable. Like the energy was, you could move it. It was alive. And it seemed to have a purpose. And I learned later that this energy is what they call potential energy, where it's always waiting to be used. And so it responds to any being's telepathic commands, creates whatever they need it to be at that particular moment. And so I later on I renamed it the Room of Requirement, like Harry Potter, if you're familiar with that.
I love it. Yes.
It's like, because whatever they need it to be, whether it's, a place to acclimate to the other side, get used to the fact you're dead and, let yourself adjust to that, or just a private space to meditate, whatever you need it to be, it can create anything. And that energy is everywhere on the other side. Everything is energy based, including us. We are energy based beings. So that's why it's our natural environment where that's where we come from. So everything there responds to our telepathic commands. Whatever we need, it makes. And instantly, it's not, you don't have to build anything or make anything. If you want to move from place to place, you just focus on where you are, where you want to be, instant teleportation from one to the other. Communication, telepathic, everything, you can read the minds of everyone, every being around you, no matter how far away they are. And, if you want to focus on a conversation, you can hear, like if I'm talking to 6 other beings, I could hear all of them at the same time, but it was not confusing. Like, it's like when you're out of your human body, out of your human brain, which is limited, you're no longer limited in how much information you can process at the same time. You're completely unlimited. And so I can, like I said, and this telepathy could carry across any distance you can imagine. Like I could be telepathically brought back, or like my guide at one point guided me to show me something when I was exploring. He was able to do that telepathically from halfway across the galaxy. So there's no limit to this. And, everything moves at the speed of thought. It's not the speed of light, because the speed of light is limited and it's physical. It's about the physical universe. But even in this universe, there are things that move at the speed of light, like photons, neutrinos, X-rays. They come into existence already going the speed of light. So this whole idea that nothing can travel faster than light, there are certain conditions that's true under, but those conditions can be altered. So the ability to travel faster than light is not only possible, it's already being done. But anyway, so so in both of my experiences, I had that time where I was in this room and acclimating to the other side. It took me longer the first time because I didn't know what was going on, and I needed to have things explained to me because I was 7 years old at the time, so I didn't have a lot of life experience then. And it took me a while to remember, okay, this is where I'm from. And things kind of came back to me piece by piece. It wasn't overwhelming. But the second time, it was like, oh, wow, okay, I've been here before. It's good. I already know what's going on. I don't need to acclimate. Let's go. I'm ready. And so once you're acclimated to the other side, once you're adjusted, the first thing that you usually have you go through is what's called a life review, which a lot of people who've had near-death experiences will report. And I like to describe it as more than just, like, you're not just seeing your life like a movie. It's like a 3-dimensional, fully interactive experience where you are in the body and you become whatever being you happen to be seeing, and you're not just seeing yourself. That's the great part about it. It's a very great teaching tool because what it shows you is the effect of everything that you've ever said or done on those around you. So if you have, let's say, helped somebody buy their groceries one time, you not only see how that affected them, how they felt in that moment, but you can see all the down the line effects of that incident. Like, because I actually had that happen one time where I helped someone buy their groceries, or someone helped me buy mine. And so what you see is maybe they were having a rough month and they had to decide between, do I buy groceries or do I pay the rent? And now they don't have to make that decision because you helped them get their groceries. So buying, able to pay the rent means I don't get evicted this month. The kids have a place to sleep. They're safe. So they're not in danger anymore. They're able to focus on their studies. Maybe they do better in school. The parents maybe use what you did for her or did for them as a teaching tool for the kids to teach them about how to treat other people. They grow up treating other people better because of it. Maybe they pay it forward to someone else. And then there's all the effects of those incidents. So it's like, I call it 6 degrees of, like, you know, the movie 6 Degrees of Separation. I call it 6 degrees of connection, because it's all these connections that you create from this one thing that you maybe never even thought twice about, but it's affected as many as dozens or hundreds of other lives down the line just from the one thing that you did. But also, you know, there's also negative ones. If you harm people, that harm is perpetuated down the line the exact same way. And so what this thing is showing you is why it's important to do things that are helpful to people, to pass love on, not hatred, not fear, not, you know, harmful things, because it shows you the down the line effects of all of it. And so, like, for instance, the second time around, I like I said, I've been bullied from the age of 7 on, and I had no idea why. Like, why am I in so much pain? Why am I suffering all the time? Why am I being beaten up every single day I go to school? And I was angry as angry as a kid could get. I was depressed. I was suicidal. I actually tried to commit suicide twice at 17 and 22 for different reasons. But I went to my guide, and he could sense the anger in me. And why am I suffering like this? Why is this happening to me? Like, did I piss God off? Like, what is it? What did I do? And the way he said this next thing stopped me in my tracks. And he just softly touched my shoulder. You know, I could feel like his energy touching mine. And he said, I can show you why this is happening, but it will not be a pleasant experience for you. And the way, like I said, the way he said it just stopped me in my tracks, and I'm like, okay, that sounds a little bit ominous, but at the same time, I needed to know, because I think in a lot of ways for people, when they don't know why something's happening, it's worse than knowing, even if knowing is bad, even if knowing is harmful. Just to know why gives you the ability to handle things better. So I still needed to know. And so they put me back in the same life review pod that I had been in previously to see this life. And what I immediately saw was that it was not this life anymore. It was a different life. And I realized it was one that I'd lived 3 lifetimes ago in Switzerland. And this was like, I was born in the mid-1690s sometime, lived through sometime in the mid-1770s. So I lived a pretty good long life. And this life, I was a natural healer. My soon-to-be wife, when I met her in my 20s, she was also a natural healer, but in different areas. And so we kind of, our abilities kind of meshed together really well. And so when we got married, we started traveling around helping people as kind of like traveling healers. And we eventually had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. All 3 of them followed in our same footsteps. In fact, after we passed away, they ended up forming the first hospital in that region of Switzerland, which is a Zermatt region, where if you're familiar with the mountain, the Matterhorn, that's where the Matterhorn is that it's in southwest Switzerland. So they formed the first hospital in that region. And so we were able to do a lot of good, and I saw that, like, what I had planned to do in that life was to help a lot of people. And not only did I do that, like, I went above and beyond what I had planned to do. So it was even better than I had hoped for. And I realized later the reason I was shown this life was to show me this is what happens when you follow your path, when you do as you plan to do, when you actually help people versus harm them. And the reason I was shown that was to contrast it with my next life, which was the complete opposite. In this one, I was born in the 1790s. I died in the 1840s. I was born in Kingston, New York, and I remember that I was a math whiz in school, became a financial whiz. My father was a former banker. He knew people in the community in New York City. He had moved out of the city after retiring. But what he did is he contacted some of his old colleagues. And at that time, you didn't go to college to become like a financial whiz or a banker or whatever the case might be. What you did is apprentice under another person who knew what they were doing. And so I apprenticed under the manager of this bank that I went to work for. And he immediately saw the potential that I had, which was extensive. And now what I was meant to do was to use that ability to help people get loans to help them get out of financial debt, or to put money aside for their child's education, or get a home loan so they could buy their first house, a house that they could pass on from one generation to another. It was stuff that, helps people live their lives financially. And what I did instead was I let my ego and narcissism and greed basically run the day. And I ended up setting up loans, for instance, that had high interest rates where they started low, but then they would all of a sudden jump up, and there was always in the small print that people never read. And so they ended up getting screwed over down the line and were stuck with these loans they couldn't get rid of. I set up these home loans the same way, where the loans would work really well for the bank, made them a lot of money, but ended up making where the payments were impossible for people to afford. And so they end up getting evicted out of their homes. Well, the homes revert to the bank at that point. So they got the house and were able to sell it to somebody else who had more money. So it was like a double win for the bank. But it was always a loss for the people who were the customers. And at that point, customer service was not a big thing at that point. Greed was. And so I was really praised a lot by my higher ups. I was actually approached by a lot of bankers, politicians, business people, things like that, to help them do something similar at their banks or their businesses. I became like a stock market whiz. At that time, the New York Stock Exchange was a brand new thing. It just been, I think it was formed in 1822 or somewhere around there. And so that was kind of new. So I immediately saw the potential of the stock market. I was able to spot when a stock was going to drop or when it was going to jump up. I could see, I instinctively knew when things were going to happen. And so I became stock market whiz, and that really made my career explode. But this whole time, I was also embezzling money from that bank. I was hoarding money for myself. I was, I bought like a home in the Upper East Side, which was the area to live in at the time, where now it's the Upper West Side. I was able to rent out an apartment down in the Soho district, to where I was able to host parties for the people who came to me for advice. And I was able to take my family on multiple vacations. Like we went to France a lot. We went to the Caribbean a couple of times, things like that. And these were, to take trips like that at that point in time was really expensive. It was out of the realm of most people's ability financially. So I was living way beyond my means, and that's actually what ended up getting me caught was the fact that I was getting paid. They knew I was getting paid a certain amount, and I was living up here financially. So they're like, how are you affording that? And they started looking into it, and they realized what I was doing. And they did an investigation for most of a year before they finally came after me. And they dropped a mountain of evidence on me that there was no way I could deny what I was doing. And so what ended up happening, they had a long, very extensive trial where they brought all the evidence against me. They threw the book at me in every way, shape, and form. All my assets were frozen, taken by the court. They were sold off and used to pay whatever debts they could pay off with them to the people that I had victimized. But the worst part about it was all these families that I had harmed. A lot of them were, like I said, evicted from their homes. Well, the husbands a lot of times would either commit petty crimes trying to get money to pay for their families or, feed them. The wives a lot of times would end up divorced, living with family members elsewhere. The children, if they were lucky, got to go with mom. But a lot of times they were not lucky. They ended up out on the streets. And you're talking about New York City. They were frying in the summer sun. They were freezing in the winter. They were begging for food or money, anything that people could possibly give them. And for me, it wasn't like watching it in a movie. I was these kids. And I still remember this one particular kid who happened to look at himself in a mirror, and he was so emaciated. It was like looking at an Auschwitz survivor. His face was just gaunt. His eyes were hollow. There was like no life in him. And like in that moment, it was like he was looking at himself, but it was like he was staring into me, into my soul, the core of me. And that one look alone, it broke me in ways I cannot possibly describe. I screaming in the pod, please make this stop. I can't take this anymore. Please don't let me see you anymore. And again, my guide's voice came into my head and said, you asked to see this, and you cannot stop it once it's started. You have to see it through. And so I had to watch every one of these people suffer in ways that no human should be made to suffer, and only because they happened to cross paths with me. I was the only reason for it. And I couldn't deny this, not even to myself. And so like I said, it hurt me so much to see it, because especially as a person in this life who has a special affinity with children and animals and can't even imagine wanting to deliberately cause someone harm. To see myself doing that and knowing it was me, and I couldn't blame it on someone else. It was me. I might have been in a different body, but that was me doing it. And to know that was the hardest part for me to see. And it humbled me so badly and so fast that by the time the life review was over with, my energy was completely drained. I couldn't function. I couldn't even think straight. Like there was this buzzing in my mind, if you will, that just like I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't do anything for a while. But what I did is once they convicted me, they sent me to Sing Sing prison, which was newer at the time. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you view this, 3 of the men whose families I had destroyed happened to be there for different reasons. They trying to help their families. They'd stolen stuff. And I was working in the prison laundry. And once they found out I was there, they made homemade shanks knives, basically, out of toothbrushes, and they came after me and stabbed me to death. And like all people who were poor or indigent prisoners whose families couldn't afford to bury them, I was shipped off to a little place called Hart Island, which was in the middle of Long Island Sound. It's still there today. In fact, the cemetery where I and others were buried is still there. It's a kind of a landmark. But anyway, it was a place called Potter's Field where indigents were buried, and most of them were in unmarked graves. So I went from like this rich guy who was living the high life, living the highest, at the highest levels of society, to buried in an unmarked grave, forgotten. No one missed me. No one came to my funeral. My wife divorced me during the trial, took our kids and went elsewhere, disappeared. So I was alone, and no one came to my funeral. No one cared. If anybody showed up, they probably would have just spit on my grave, and I wouldn't have blamed them one bit. Like I hated who I was. I was ashamed of who I was, and immediately, like when I came to the other side again after that lifetime, I remember thinking, I've got to fix this. Somehow I've got to fix this. And that was the first time I had seen that life review. This was the second time. And so what I did is I plotted out a lifetime where I would be born in 1900 in Indiana or Iowa, one of those Midwest I states. And at the time, people who are history buffs will probably remember that World War I started in 1914 and ended in 1918. Well, towards the end of that war, there was an epidemic called the Spanish flu, an influenza epidemic that swept the world, killed millions of people. It was the worst epidemic. That's when COVID was compared to a few years ago, because it started almost literally a century later. And so I had myself catch that and die at the age of 17. But when I came back to the other side, I did great. This must work. I was patting myself on the back, basically. And when I got to the other side, nothing had changed. In fact, if anything, it was worse. And I didn't understand, like, what do I have to do to fix this? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I was panicked. And at the time, there was an area on the other side that a lot of people, when they see it, if they don't understand what it is or don't ask what it is, they mistake it for hell. But it's not. There is no hell as religions have described it. What it is an area where beings who either believe they deserve to be punished for the rest of eternity because either they've been programmed to think that way or just feel that way about themselves, or think that they don't deserve the light and unconditional love that is everywhere on the other side and emanates from the being who created all of this, will segregate themselves away from the rest of the beings that are on the other side. And this area is it's basically darkness personified. It's misery. It's like if you've ever seen What Dreams May Come, the movie with Robin Williams, when he has to go find his wife in hell, it's like your worst nightmares brought to life. All the worst things you think about yourself, your anger, your fear, your paranoia, the way you feel about yourself, all that is because the universe is basically a big mirror. It takes what you truly desire, what you want, what you focus on, and brings it to you. So if you focus on nothing but negative, 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 that's what it's going to focus on you. It's going to send back to you. And so it's like a big mirror focusing all this negativity back on them. And so it's like a repeating loop where some people will see disembodied spirits sometimes on Earth where they don't know they're dead, and they're doing the exact same thing. They repeat the same pattern. They come out of the same place. They go down the same hallway. And they do this over and over again, sometimes for hundreds of years, because they don't know they're dead. It's exactly the same type of beings that are in this area on the other side. And I immediately thought, okay, maybe I should put myself in there. But thankfully, I went to my guide first. And I said, is this what I need to do? And he immediately said, stop. That's the worst thing you can possibly do. He said, if you think about this, what you focused on when you made that decision to end your life early, when you thought about putting yourself in this area here, it was, you said, what were you focused on? Was it yourself or was it other people? And I said, well, it was probably me. And he said, it was definitely you. You were focused on, I want to make myself feel better. I want to end my pain. I want to fix my life. And so when you're focused on yourself, the worst things are going to happen. And he said that's true in life and in death. Doesn't matter. Because what you like I keep saying to people, what you focus on becomes your reality. If you focus on yourself, then only bad things are going to happen. Selfish thoughts do not create good outcomes. It's just as simple as that. And so he said, I said, well, if these aren't going to work, what else can I possibly do? What do I do to fix this? I can't just let it go. And he said, no, you can't. You shouldn't let it go. But there's a way. There's only one way that you can fix this. And I said, what is it? I'll do it. Anything, I'll do it. And he said, you have to live what's called a life of atonement. And what that means is you voluntarily incarnate in a body, you come back to Earth or wherever you happen to be at that time. And you live a life where you experience pain and suffering on the same level that you once inflicted on other beings. And he said, that's not all of it. That's only the first part. Because anyone can be in pain or suffer and, but their first instinct a lot of times is to use that pain and suffering as an excuse to inflict it on others, as I had done. And so he said the second part of that is you need to focus on converting that pain and suffering into sympathy, empathy, and compassion for other beings, helping them despite your pain or even because of your pain. Use your pain to understand the pain and suffering that they're going through and use it to help them. He said only by helping others truly not for personal gain, not for attention, not for an attaboy from anybody, but just because you can and it's needed. That's the only reason, if you do that and you do this for a lifetime, he said that will balance things out. And that's what this life is about for me. That's why I was going through bullying and abuse and the constant injuries and all the stuff that I've had happen over my lifetime. And a lot of people will come to me and say, well, I'm so sorry you're going through this, or I wish you didn't have to go through this. I chose this. I chose this life deliberately. And in fact, he and I crafted this together, including the near-death experiences, by the way, because I needed to see the other side to realize that it was real. I was given this timeline of events in my own life that would happen, as far as injuries that would happen, outcomes of that would happen, so I could verify it for myself and say, okay, this was real. It actually happened. Then the second one was to show me why. It was to show me what my purpose in this life was, what I was meant to do, why I was in pain and suffering, and what I was supposed to do with it. And so all this was a deliberate plan set up by me and my guide, chosen by me to balance myself out. So I don't want anyone's sympathy. I don't want people to feel sorry for me, Because if you're going to feel sorry for anybody, feel sorry for the people I victimized. Feel sorry for the people I harmed in my past life. Because trust me, they deserve it. They were innocent. I was not. I'm not innocent now. Because once you've done harm to other people, you've lost that innocence. You have to regain it. And so that's what this life is about, is me fixing what I screwed up. So, that's one thing that I wish people would realize, like all the times people do harm to others, deliberately especially, you're not going to like what happens to you after you die. You're not going to go to hell. You're not going to be punished. You're not going to be judged even. But what you'll see is what the effect of everything that you did and said to other people from their perspective. You're going to feel it, every bit of it. And you're going to feel just like I felt, drained, like you're broken. And you're going to have to do what I'm doing right now to balance that back out, or make a lot of stupid decisions and end up having to repeat things over and over again. Like I said, I had a life I ended early and almost put myself in this separate area to wallow in my own misery. And just, oh, by the way, the beings that are in that area, they don't stay there. There are beings around them who project positive healing thoughts into them and eventually are able to convince them that this is not where they belong, and they leave it by their same choice that they used to get into it. So it's not a permanent place. It's not somewhere that anybody is sent. There's no hell. You don't have to worry about being permanently punished or suffering for the rest of eternity. It doesn't happen, because the being who created us, being who created all the universe, is filled with unconditional love. And a lot of people say that word, unconditional, but they don't understand what it means, because immediately they start putting conditions on it. And that's the ironic part about it. Like, well, it's unconditional love, but in order to do it, you've got to pray, and you got to go to church, and you got to read your Bible, and you got to do this, and you got to do that. No. Unconditional means literally without conditions. There are none. And this being, everywhere I went on the other side, no matter what I was experiencing, this being was with me in all of it. And I could feel that unconditional love in every single moment that I was on the other side. And imagine feeling that for 11 years combined between my first and second near-death experience, because that's how much time I experienced on the other side. That second time was a decade. Imagine feeling unconditional love in everything you do for 10 years, and then bringing that feeling back with you. Like, it's been 40 years. I still feel it now. Like, it's with me every single day. I feel it every day. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not, some guru sitting on a mountaintop, it's not me. I make mistakes. I'm human. I get angry. I throw things. I do stupid stuff, make bad choices. But the difference is I don't stay there. I don't stay in that rut. I don't stay angry. I deal with the anger and I get past it and I move on. And it's how I've decided to be, to help people, and to, no matter where I go, whether if I get angry or I get sad or I get depressed, don't wallow in it. Get over it, get past it. Focus yourself back on helping people. Because every time I'm helping someone, it feels great. It feels wonderful. I feel fulfilled. I feel like I have a purpose. And I cannot describe how wonderful that feeling is. So, and this can, anybody can do that. You don't have to have a near-death experience to do that. Helping people you don't even have to make necessarily an effort. Just be there for them. Listen to them when they're having a hard day. Just listen to them. Be sympathetic. That's free. You don't have to pay for that. You don't have to go somewhere to feel sympathy for someone, or empathy or compassion. That's free. We're all able to do that. And In fact, we're meant to. I mean, the one thing a lot of people don't realize is we think of ourselves as individual beings on this side of the veil. We think of ourselves as separate from each other, but we're not. We're all intimately connected. And on the other side, we live this as that's our reality. We live that all the time. But on this side, we forget that when we incarnate, because in order to fully invest in us every single lifetime on a low evolution planet like this one, you have to forget what the other side is like, because otherwise it's that constant burden that's on you. Like knowing that you could be better and you are better, but you can't be better here. You're limited here. And knowing that you're limited, knowing that you can't rise above a certain level as a human being, it would be very difficult for a lot of people to handle. So we have to forget that so we can just be ourselves here. But that one experience of all the stuff that I went through as being on the other side, that one life review changed everything for me. It changed my perspective of other people, my perspective of the things that we do to each other, good, bad, or indifferent. How many lives you can affect from one simple action that might be, like I said, something you wouldn't even think twice about. You just do it. Okay, no big deal. 5 minutes later, it's forgotten. For them, it's down the line. It's affecting all these other people. And you don't even see that except in a life review. And I think if everyone could see a life review just once, even if it was mine, just to see what it's like to either be, to do what you're supposed to do, to follow your life path, to help people for an entire lifetime versus harm people for an entire lifetime. And see the difference in how your life plays out, what you have to do afterwards to balance things out on this side. If they could see that, it would change the world overnight. So, like I said, that experience alone defined, like when I came back, first of all, like I said, I was the first time I was in a coma for 7 more days. The second time, I was immediately back. But I'll tell you this much, time doesn't work there like it does here. It's very, like here it's linear. You have the past, the present, the future. You have to move through the past to the present, move through the present to the future. There's no way to skip over that. Same with space. If you want to go from point A to point B, you've got to cover the distance between the two. And how far that distance is and how fast you move determines how fast you get there. Well, on the other side, that's not true. Time is like, if you can imagine a long piece of string, that's linear time, linear space, crumpled into a big ball where every point in time and space touches every other point in time and space. And you're able to access any of them instantaneously. That's what reality is on the other side. So when I say you can move across the universe if you want to, or across the galaxy, or to the other end of the solar system, you can do it in less time than it takes you to blink. Telepathy, being able to communicate. I could communicate across the entire galaxy with my guide. He was able to guide me somewhere, or tell me it's time to come back. First time I felt my grandmother worried about me, and I was out. I was literally, there's a heart-shaped feature on Pluto, which people didn't see until we sent a satellite, a probe by there in recent years. And I happened to be sitting in the middle of that heart-shaped feature, just kind of enjoying the view. And I felt my grandmother worried about me. I hope he doesn't die. I hope he's okay. And immediately it brought me straight back to her. Like one instant I'm there, next instant I'm by her side, standing in the hospital hallway, looking in the window at myself. And so like I say, everything's instantaneous. So when you come back from that, especially when in your mind, you just experienced 10 years of that, it's like I had to relearn everything. It took me 3 weeks to learn how to speak. because I was so used to telepathic. I kept thinking things to people like, what's going on? What's that thing you're putting in the bag? It's in my arm. What's next? Like, well, what do I need to do? I kept thinking these things and no one was answering me. I couldn't sense their thoughts. And I was like, I almost panicked because I didn't know what was going on. Like, why can't I sense anything? Why can't I hear them? And it took me a while to realize you don't have telepathy on this side. You had it on the other side. You got used to that, but you don't have it here. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to eat. I didn't eat for 3 weeks. Didn't eat anything because I was so used to not having to eat. I didn't have a body. Like everything, I had to relearn how to be human because all of a sudden I went from being this unlimited, expansive being that felt like it was as big as the universe into this little tiny space called a human body that was so limited and constricting and painful. Like when I first came back, light hurt, sound hurt, everything hurt. It was like being in a ball of pain. I just want to curl up in a ball on the bed and just lay there and die. It was like, why am I back here? I don't want to be here. And people say they don't want to, when they say they don't want to come back from a near-death experience, that's what they're talking about. Like, to go from that, it's like, I make an analogy, it's like going to Disney World in the Caribbean and every beautiful, wonderful, amazing, fun place you can imagine going to, spending 10 years doing that, and then all of a sudden you're summarily dumped in the sewer. It's that drastic of a change. And so no one wants to come back from that. Even the ones who have a slightly negative experience don't want to come back because even a negative experience on the other side is better than the best day here. And that really puts it in perspective, So that's all I can say really about that part. Is there anything you wanted to ask me about it?
I just want to say I've been doing these interviews for several years, and your story is one of the most powerful and had the most profound impact on me. And I just really want to thank you for being willing to share. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, we have a few fun ways that you can do that. I do have a merch store linked in the description. We've put some of the phrases on t-shirts that you guys requested. I have affiliate links to my favorite blue blockers, my favorite red light panel, and a couple of other companies that I work with. You can join my membership at the Sanctuary. You can sign up for an energy healing. I also offer a 4-session energy healing package. You'll find all these links in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. Now go live your most extravagantly loving life.